Welcome back. So for the final hour of our 3-hour period here, we will continue on looking at Lord Vasishta's pathway, supreme pathway to moksha. Moksha or mukti, one of those words for spiritual emancipation that does not mean something you get later, like a post-mortem emancipation, or something you can get through any method. As I was explaining in the first half, it's a state always at hand, which would be like saying there's the word, and the word is continually putting off vibrations, and vibrations are coming back to the word, so that worlds and beings that live in them, everything, all live in one eternal moment. It's a great non-dual teaching in India that defies time and space. And it's more of a state of a consciousness, and people who fall out of that state of consciousness and fall into what we were calling dreaming and waking, after maybe going through deep sleep to see all the seeds of it, and then water certain seeds and dream about them, and then take them into a solid form, and then back to dreaming and back to... This happens every lifetime. It also happens every breath. And every 24-hour period, of course, we know that with our own waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states. So it's a whole different orientation, a way of looking at eternal life, you might say, rather than ordinary life. And those who love their life will lose their life, and those who hate their life will get it again in eternity. That's how Christ described eternal life. So you have to hate things that aren't real and that are preponderant and that are getting in the way of your vision, of the single vision that you should have. And so this is how Samkriti is getting the lens of his eye washed further by the sun god, who is pictured there, and we have another chart that I made for the beginning of the Akshi Upanishad, where it shows you the whole sun god and all the mantras to light that we have in India, like the one I started out today, Hiran Mai, and the Gayatri, and famous mantras like that. And then all these rays are coming off are different levels of vibration, starting with the highest wisdom on down to physical objects. So everything is a vibration. We'll look at that in a minute, especially some of the problematic vibrations that people are allowing their minds to partake of. Erratic vibrations, restless vibrations, dull vibrations. Yoga has a whole list of those, and it's looking at this unique perspective as something that is a different perspective altogether than conventional ways of looking at things. So we were studying slokas 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, because I make sure that we get some headway this weekend on the Akshi Upanishad. This is all inside of this third state of a sansarga, how to achieve non-attachment. And so I read those 5 slokas, and now we're going back on those 5 slokas and taking some illustrations. They repair to the hermitages of the ascetics, which these young men are doing with the teacher, and they then expend their life in the woods, meditating, and move about the forest. But the whole process has been made beautiful by their placid minds, as if to say, if you have a restless mind, the whole thing's not going to look so good to you in life. But if your mind is peaceful, then you go out and everything, it reflects a very good day. Sattva, that's called, as compared to rajas, restlessness, or tamas, indolence. And then, since we were looking at the 7-step yoga of Samkriti there in the Akshi Upanishad, I offset it here with the road to moksha here, the supreme pathway, and we had just looked at the 4 qualifications. Nice long word in Sanskrit, sadhana chatushtaya. Chatush refers to 4, and sadhana means a practice that you do. What's missing in the world today in households is practice, spiritual practice. It's just more than just prayer or praying at meals or anything. You have to actually do a 4-fold practice of the yogas, or an 8-limbed practice. These have to be a part of your everyday life. Of course, they are your life if you're monastic orientation or you've renounced in that way, but it would be nice to bring it back into everyday life so that dharmic householders will appear again, and great souls will appear, like they're appearing in Tibet and so forth. But we don't see them coming out of American life yet. So underneath that, which we looked at, is a nice list: discrimination, detachment, peace, self-control, self-settledness, forbearance, concentration, faith, and yearning. All of those things formed the 4 jewels, or probably better, 4 treasures. And then amongst the 4 treasures, there's those 6 jewels. That's one thing which Lord Vasishtha says comes along the way of this eternal path to moksha. And the next thing is the 3 great sources, next thing would be Brahmavidya, taking initiation into the path of Brahman. Until the mind is illumined, walk the path of does it say? Initiation, shown by realized souls. So you're to then remain adhering to that and get your mantra diksha. Sometimes they even sing about that. I had a note there about that. Is it? Yeah. Sometimes they even sing about that in some of the songs, how important mantra diksha is. And again, back to words, how important words are. Monopoli bhajakari icha hoy torjaya chari guru data moha mantra Divanishi japa kori monopoli bhajakari. In just one of several verses, he sings all these sounds you hear are natural mantras, like the ear concentrating on what's divine. They repeat spontaneously as the whole world worships the Lord. And her essence, that's what we were talking about, Shakti power, constitutes the power in every letter of every alphabet. And each letter secretly bears the flower of her name. So this, Ram Prasad is his name, singer, ecstatic singer, is focusing on the deep power of words and mantras and initiation. So if you enter into the periphery of that with spiritual life, and that's one of the things you'll do at by the time that 3rd doorway of yoga opens, that 3rd stage occurs. Because you've already trained it to do that with the import of the scriptures, the shruti, the smriti, and all that we were talking about. And then it comes to a time when you say, well, I think I'd like to formally commit to the path. And that's called Brahmavidya. You take the feet of Brahman. You take it in Vasishtha's way of looking at it, you take it in 3 ways. And I mentioned those earlier. You take a teacher and you get a transmission from them. But basically, it says here, just get initiation of the mantra into the path of Brahman. Brahmavidya, like the feet of Brahman. So you're taking refuge in the Lord And since you already know the difference between God and the world, then you're not accepting any wood nickels. There's no false imitations or usurpers to the throne or competitors to the throne of your heart. You've seen by your clarity of action and through finding a teacher and walking the path that this is what you want, and so you're fully committed to it. So that's why we don't believe in proselytization. We don't want to convert anyone, Vedantists. Be better if they found initiation through the religion of their birth, but if the religion of their birth is not doing its job, which is quite often the case, again, as Krishna states in the Gita, then we go looking around for some wisdom traditions and some meditation traditions like Taoism and Buddhism. And we also want some real teachings in Dharma, like you find in Vedanta, that will reorient our mind to the supreme goal, and so that we can align ourselves with that. It's like a pole star for a sailor who, all of a sudden got lost in the sea of transmigration. So it all comes back to this finding your original path that you probably knew before you were born, and hopefully you knew before you passed away in your last lifetime. Because the Tibetan Buddhists have been teaching us about conscious death. The bardo happens between death and the next lifetime, and how the soul transitions out of the body and into another inner realm, kingdoms of heaven within, if you want to call them that, and positions itself in a condition that's going to be helpful for its next birth. This is, of course, if it's transmigrating still. If the soul does get over the tendency or the desire to take birth again and again, because Father of Yoga says that's one of the deepest desires, is for, it's again attached to the ancestor realm, is they want to be born again and again to enjoy the things of earth. And they cloud the issue with power and domination and wealth, and all for the wrong purposes. And so that puts them in a round called samsara. Samsara by the Buddhists, or we call it Maya. So that rounds of birth and death and ignorance can go on for this eternity of cycles that are going on, because, as I was saying, and I didn't quite explain it, if you were going back 4 billion years and you were only standing upright 5 million of them, that doesn't give you, and you were only really in the human form for a short time, it doesn't give you a very long time to live thousands of lifetimes. So in our knowledge of human history, how far we go back isn't very far. How many lifetimes could we have lived? But they're talking about hundreds and thousands of lifetimes. You have to understand that as lifetimes within you, not lifetimes back in time. That's why we don't believe in evolution except on the level where it's proposed. Because we never were a monkey or a paramecium or anything. We were always the soul inside, and we participated in that if we fell to earth. And so when you give up the body and you go to the bardo of death, then you go within. Then it's up to you. I mean, if your mental conditioning yourself is that you believed in earth, you believed in evolution, you believed in wealth and things that would fulfill you, then of course you're going to be born in nature again. Otherwise, the only other option then that they give you in a religion that has failed to give you truth is upwards. So please God help me. But there's nothing up there. So you have a third choice, that's the kingdoms of heaven are within you, to go within. And that's where these many lifetimes can go on, because time is endless and cycles are endless. So beings can get on 4,320,000,000 years is one day of Lord Brahma's life, and his night is another 4,320,000,000 years, inner life. See, it's an eternal life. And his night is what we would call the void, and his day is what we would call a cycle of life. a yuga. They have names for it. We don't have ways of explaining this in English. So why we go to the Dharma and to wisdom teachings to clarify this, or at least to give us a different idea to consider it with, since evolution isn't making sense to us and we don't see anything up above us. It is all within you, truly. All knowledge and all life and all planets and all worlds within you. And thou art that. That is the God you're seeking, which is within you. So, if you had this lifetime, this definitive lifetime, where, as you said, I think I'll just commit to that now and give everything else up, separate the wheat from the chaff, then mantra diksha, like he sings here, would be important to you. You'd find a teacher, say, give me that one saying by which knowing everything else will be known. Because I've tried everything else and it's ended up with a whole conflagration of knowledge that's contradicting itself. I didn't get any peace from it. So give me that one thing by which knowing all else will be known. And so that will be found in a bijam, or in a seed word, connected with a great soul, like Swamiji. And that will be the end, the definitive end to your transmigration process. You decided you wanted to get beyond it, now you are beyond it. And you had to do that. You see, no devil or God would help or hinder you. So, and that's self-knowledge, Atma Bodha, they call it. And to help you then, Vashishtha is telling his young charge, you'll probably find the three great sources next. Sometimes they're called the three proofs of truth. Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava, they call them sometimes. Shruti means to hear, Yukti means to reason, Anubhava means to get experience of. Or sometimes they call it Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana, again, to hear, Manana, to roll it over in your manas, mind, and Nididhyasana, to get your own direct experience of it. So whatever you call it, the three great sources are transmission from a teacher, knowledge of the scriptures, and your own experience. That puts everything else to rest. All devilish things and all mixed things. You're proving everything by these three great sources, which have always been there, always will be, and always can be referred to. It's all back inside of you, so you have to find a way of accessing it. You know, if you come out and they immediately condemn you to the eternal money-making process, and you'll forget about all that. Lifetime after lifetime, the same thing will happen to you. Lifetimes of lawyers, lifetimes of doctors, lifetimes of athletes, lifetimes of nothing will occur to you of your own deep higher self, and life will then be bereft of meaning. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, all the zeros are everything you get in life, and in the end you add them up. No, they don't add up anything. But if you were only to put a 1 in front of that line of zeros, how fulfilling all that would have been. Everything would have led to something meaningful. Your marriage, your raising your children, making money, anything you could account for would have ended up with real true meaning, and you'd feel fulfilled by it. And then pretty soon you'd get world weary, they say. You'd get tired of doing this again and again, even dharmically. And it's just a great blessing to us that some souls who do get tired of it decide to come back anyway, to be crucified or to be poisoned or whatever we do to them. They'll come back again anyway because they're not afraid of death. They know it's an illusion. And they're not afraid of time. They know that's all in the mind. And space doesn't daunt them. So they'll come back again as bodhisattvas or as jivan muktas, or, and they'll just say, try and waken us up time and time again. Because if one soul can get awakened, that's worth the whole thing. That was the quote he made. He said, I'll come back again thousands of times if I can just free one soul from Maya. So that's the kind of commitment he has to the struggling soul, the aspirant, we might call them. So those three great sources would come next. Then penultimately, Atma Tripti, the three requisites for wisdom of your true self. That would be destroy all illusory thoughts, gain extreme quiescence of mind, and merge into Brahman. Brahmakara vritti. So vritti, vibration. You merge all the thoughts of your mind, which are kara, the cause of everything, into Brahman, which is the great cause, or you might call the causeless cause. By these three great prerequisites may you attain to the Atmic state free from all stains and all pains. And then finally, the 4 sentinels probably would be yours at the end. Sentinels means you've got this great attainment, but you want guards at the gate. If you have the 4 feet of Brahman, they call it sometimes, which is waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and turiya, you want a guard at each one of those. So those are called sentinels. Basically, the first is peace. You want the peace that, like I say, is never broken. You want self-inquiry constantly, which is that passing through that second gate of achara. And acharya or achara or vichara, all the same root. Achara means to be qualified. So the teacher, if he speaks to you, goes right over your head, you're not qualified yet. If he speaks to you and you get it, you're qualified. So you have to take some time to qualify yourself in any given pathway. And so, if he's going to follow Lord Vasishta's pathway, then he's going to have to adhere to all these things and fulfill them, all the way down to the requisites, and finally to the posting the sentinels at the gate. That last sentinel being holy company. So you want peace, you want to inquire constantly about the nature of reality, you want to reach a state of contentedness, and you want to frequent holy company. Asansarga is the name of that 3rd gate, where you achieve non-attachment. Now, coming off of this teaching of vrittis, you see vibrations, where it said Brahmakara vritti, how to dissolve everything into Brahman. Sometimes we use that analogy of the beaker, empty beaker and the beaker with oil, and so you just pour one into the other, and it's a perfect, without a splash, like water would splash, but oil would just be perfect into the receptacle, you see. So this is your mind, and you pour all its contents, hopefully that have been purified like oil, into the beaker of empty beaker, which is God, and the emptiness of form, and empty of name, empty of problems. When they say emptiness in Buddhism, sometimes it can be misleading, and people can get a little bit fearful. But basically, emptiness means everything that is of the nature of relativity is gone out of it, and it's why it's so hard to describe, or why they, give up trying. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha ananda brahmana vidvan. A beautiful slokas about it, which say that when it defies speech and mind run away when they encounter that. Na vacho, speech, words. It just, they can't. The tongue can't explain anything, like Buddha under the bo tree. After his nirvana, couldn't say anything. And so speech, even mind, then disappears, and can't bear to be a solidified thought complex in the presence of that which is so free. So beautiful slokas in the Upanishads describe that, and in Shankara's scriptures. That was from Shankara's scripture. So back to this. We were talking about vibration then, so let's look at, if I put it up, let's look at it. Some vibrations that we might want to take up and look at. Coming off of that chart where Vashishtha would say that if you had 3 requisites that you needed, you'd want to destroy all illusory thoughts. So that would give you emptiness, wouldn't it? If your mind isn't full of these thoughts of half-truths or doubts, falsities, misfiances, and so forth. And then on top of that, you'd want to have this quiescence of mind that results from that. And then finally, all vibrations, even the dharmic vibrations and teachings, the good vibrations, also then will get emptied into Brahman. So it would just be this hailstone losing its form as it fell into the ocean. And then that has to be left to your direct spiritual experience. Ramakrishna said once, they asked him what his samadhi was like, and he said, it's like a salt doll walking in an ocean. So it means that salt doll, had solidified salt. It saw the ocean and it decided it wanted to measure its depths. Nobody had ever done that. So it went in to try, and it dissolved in its own essence, so nobody was left to come out. So when you go into that state, there's no separate ego anymore, and none of that is happening. It's just a state of not two-ness. I mean, Zen would say, you don't want to call it oneness because that limits it, but it's, we're all like emptiness. Everything went away, and all that was left was this unalloyed bliss. So that was Brahmakara Vritti. All the vibrations got dissolved. Even Omkara Laya Vritti, just before that, because this really comes from the threefold system that's not listed here. Even the word got dissolved back into Brahman. So that's where you make that conclusion that in the beginning was the word was with God, and then it was God. So it must have got dissolved at some time. So the power of the word wasn't there to produce anything anymore, any vibrations. So that was the source of everything, the word, because God can't be a cause for anything. Brahman is causeless. It's just this boundaryless ocean of light with no activity in it, no thought in it, no movement in it, completely at peace, and no vibration in it. Like somebody has to drop a pebble, on the lake, and these vibrations went out and hit the shore. It'd be like the Big Bang or something on the physical level. There was nothing. God breathed on the waters. I mean, whether you put it scientifically or theologically, I don't think it's hard to understand. But probably what's harder to understand is that you might have, wanted to leave that ocean the way it was and be in it, be dissolved in it, be peaceful all the time. And the beings who come to outer form who are peaceful reflect that too. They're not having a bad lifetime. Have a nice day, it's like have a nice lifetime, but most people are not having a nice lifetime. It's varied and going in and out of that. And here's why, because yoga, Father of Yoga says they have these vibrations in them, and I've took them out of the sutras and put them in an order. First, there's dull vibrations. That Vishada is the word. Arjuna on the battlefield was Vishada before Krishna talked with him. He was dull and dejected. Might as well take the solution as we go along so we don't get too depressed about this. If you have Vishada Vritti, then you'd want to try some conscious breathing connected to teachings. Not just breathe and, oh, I feel better now. Oh, I don't feel so good an hour later. But then connect your breath and get yourself even-minded, quiescent of mind, and then with that mind put it on teachings, or put it on Brahman, or put it on Sri Ramakrishna, or Holy Mother, or Jesus, or Buddha, or whoever you love. And the mind then starts to lose its old impressions and gain new impressions. Old samskaras get kicked out of the mind, and new samskaras take their place. Father of Yoga teaches that. Samskaras of samadhi take the place of samskaras of samsara. Samskaras of samsara, but you want positive vibrations there for a while. The next level of vibration is vitarka vritti, thoughts containing demonic vibrations, which foster violence. So how do those come into the mind of so many beings to cause such havoc and suffering to others without any seeming conscience to them? And so if a person became aware of violent vibrations in their mind, they would probably want to try Indriya Nigrata Nirodha, that is, control of senses and restraint of negative thoughts. So thoughts and senses would have to be taken from savitarka, you might say, to nirvitarka. So savitarka, Father, because I'm thinking in terms of yoga now, so shift from Vedanta to yoga. Savitarka means, outer objects as compared to inner objects. Both those objects are a problem in yoga. You get rid of the outer object, I'm not attached to that anymore, but then you're still coveting in your mind. So Father Yoga says you're going to have to, savitarka and nirvitarka, you're going to have to go beyond both. Go beyond them both, sannyas and bold. Neither attached to pleasure nor afraid of pain. So, one of his poems. So, that's going to fall upon you to practice that, to get rid of these violent thoughts that come up out of nowhere. They actually come up from your past actions and past lifetimes. Third is shushna-vritti, mental vibrations beset by falsehood and deceit, leading to suffering. So basically, asat, asatcham, false words. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, an elephant's tusks come out, but they shouldn't go back in. Because that's where you get a mad elephant, is where the tusk curves. It's still growing, and it gets the jawbone, and in a couple of days grows a little more, and pretty soon the elephant's getting a huge toothache, basically, a tusk ache. And it drives it mad, and it goes berserk. It's called a mad elephant. So he's saying a man's words should never come back like that. He says should be truthful and honest and grow, go outward in a positive way, never turn. So otherwise, shushna vritti will result. And the way you'll get rid of that is practice of moral exercises and daily observances. Those are called yamas and niyamas. And people will sit and do these asanas, but that's the third limb of yoga. The first limb of yoga is observances, and the second is moral practices. Or vice versa if you want. But you start off with nonviolence, truthfulness, and non-covetousness, continence. All these are practices in yoga which make up the first limb, but people are jumping to the third limb and doing asana before they master or even practice the yamas and niyamas. Niyamas are even more interesting because they relate to what we're saying here. The study of scriptures is one of the niyamas. That's early in your life. It's also early in the system, isn't it? And Ishvara Pranidhan, is early. Also getting a teacher or having an ideal. So all those things are known to everyone. Vishishta way back when, Patanjali later, Vedavyas after that. This is common, run of teachings. It's very uncommon as far as its uniqueness, but it's a common run of teachings in Dharma. There's a certain way in which you proceed. Because if you take a person off a couch or a chair or off the sidewalk and you have them sit on the floor like this, then you're splitting the spine. And so the power at the base of the spine is wanting to move. You have to direct that because it can get misdirected to unwholesome practices and unclean things, or get delusion and so forth. But so just basically just sitting like this releases power at the base of your spine. And the West, we're just chair sitters and couch sitters and so forth, so we never really experienced that. I'll just sit on the floor here for a second with me. And so that's Kundalini, they call it. She's not coming yet, but Udgata from her is coming and testing you. So that's just, I'm using that at a very basic level of Kundalini Yoga teaching to say that, you know, a practice like that will happen if you sit and call that an asana, but then right away you're supposed to do the first two limbs of yoga. You're supposed to practice nonviolence and truthfulness and all those. You know, and when I studied the scriptures when I was 20, I always did it like this. I didn't sit in a chair. So, yeah. Because it was a reverent yogic position I wanted, you know, so I wanted my spine to be straight, I wanted my lungs to be on breathing, and I wanted my mind to be clear. So I would sit like that, and I would never lay down or something to do it. Or you know, maybe sit at the table occasionally because you can keep your spine straight. But basically you wanted to have that asana, but not for the sake of shifting to a lot of asanas, which gives you a desire to shift to positions when you should be creating a non-desire to move, like Buddha under the bo tree for 49 days. So you want to be stationary and still, because Brahman is stationary and still. And you're trying to be like Brahman, Brahmakara vritti. You want to dissolve everything that moves into the immovable. So you have to simulate it, you know. Meister Eckhart said, if you want to see God, you should see how God sees. Well, God sees obviously through the single eye, Jesus said. And Meister Eckhart loved Jesus. So it's that non-dual teaching is there in early Christendom too. So, you know, you become stationary and your breathing becomes even and your mind becomes clear and this third eye opens. It might take some years, depending on, you know, how quickly you can access what you already know. What was that Vivek used to say? Knowledge is the manifestation of education is the manifestation of knowledge already within you. So you're going to get an education, right? I'm going to get this knowledge. No, education is the manifestation of knowledge already within you. Same with religion, you know, and devotion. That faith is already within you, but you think you have to go get it in a church or something. So you always, in yoga, you always start with what is inside of you. And if you find out that what is got clouded or covered or sublated or distorted in some way, then you're going to have to go to a teacher and tell them, no, that's not the case. You just have some clouds in the way of your sun today. So wait, and the clouds will pass and the sun will come back out. You know, here's something to help them pass quicker, you see. Something to pass your time quicker. Time's an illusion anyway, so let it pass. So all of this around this, I'm stopping with a little extra time there because yamas and niyamas are the solution for Shushna vritti. You practice moral exercises and daily observances. Notice how they were called daily observances. That means you should do them daily. Not once a week or, oh, I think I'll do it for a month and give it up, or something like that. All right. Vijatiya vritti is next. Turbulent and contrary thoughts. That's vibrations which confuse and fluster the mind. You see, you're getting out of the realm of tamas into rajas now, out of the slothful heavy into the active and frenetic. So what do you do with that? You get darshan. You keep holy company with the Guru, Sangha, and other enlightened beings. Remember, that was his last teaching here, satsanga. Like we did last night, satsang was company of holy people together talking about truth. They didn't talk about worldly things or surface things. Oh, that can happen anywhere. Got together and you just talk about truth. And that's having darshan with your own soul, or you can have darshan with a guru or with a great soul. But basically, that's one of the important things, a way of getting rid of these contrary thoughts. Kashaya vritti is next, vibrations rising from residual impressions due to enjoyment of pleasure. So you can see how when I looked at all the types of vrittis I found in the Yoga Sutras, I classed them like that, from tamas to rajas to sattva. And here we're getting close to sattva, because most people think if they're having pleasure, and they're having pleasure all the time, and it's unimpeded, that's a kind of freedom for them. See? It's happiness. But you know the teachings of Buddhism and Vedanta raise their eyebrows when you mention that name. What kind of happiness are you talking about here? Eternal happiness would be bliss, of course, but happiness that comes and goes, no, we don't recommend that, because suffering and happiness have this relationship with each other. It's called karma. So in that way, if you have an attachment to pleasure, or entertaining only pleasurable things in your mind, not transcendental things or serious things, say, then you probably should get pratyahara happening. Withdraw the mind from the thoughts of sense objects. And that's what I was talking about. That's not a one-part thing. Like say, well, I gave up coffee, or I gave up a chair so I could sit like this, you know. You give up the outer object, but the inner object's still there. You're sitting on the floor in a pillow, you're thinking, God, I wish I had a chair. My back hurts, my knees hurt, whatever, you know. But my mind, you know, is not able to lift itself off of both the external object and the internal object. It's going to be very important to be able to have that pratyahara, which is the fifth limb of yoga, in order to detach yourself from mental ghosts and fantasies and sankalpas, imaginations, like a kid daydreaming, or you in high school looking out the window when you should be learning your subject. So this power of imagination, fantasy, brooding, all sorts of things, the mind can just fall into it even in the midst of meditation. Should be thinking about God, saying the mantra, all of a sudden 10 minutes later you go, oh my God, where did I go? You see, I just went on this long sankalpa in my mind. That's what this is. It's an 80, 90-year-old sankalpa in your mind. It's no different than a thought that's been let loose. Your life I'm talking about. So if it's not conscious, then it's just a quick trip you took in a series of lifetimes. A bubble that rose in an ocean and is all popped there. So it'll just form again and again and again, and daydream itself away into oblivion. But from dreams awake, from bonds be free. Arise awake, we were saying. So that's what a soul who wants to be ever awake. Right? Our founder here of SRV used to call that yogic insomnia, the ever awake state. So you have to get rid of these vibrations to be ever awake. These will cloud the picture again and again and again. So you can see that gets a little subtler when you get to enjoyment, and you're going to have to master pratyahara. If we looked at the 8 limbs of yoga, which we're supposed to be doing right now, and hatha yoga is kind of taking the field. The third limb's kind of been pulled out and said, well, this is yoga. They're actually calling hatha yoga. But yoga is 8-limbed, ashtanga. It's another 8 system. So if we just looked at all 8, they're like glowing in the air before us on a ladder or on a tree, and we said, there's 5, pratyahara, you see. So that means detachment of the mind from objects. So no one's ever getting there. They're practicing, a little bit of peacefulness and trying to be truthful and so forth, and they sit in asana, and then they do breathing. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And so now they try, with that practice of 4 limbs, they try and take the 5th, pratyahara, and get rid of all thoughts from their mind, and they fall down again. The West, Americans particularly, falling down again and never getting the mastery over the objects. Both outer and inner, mastery over the objects. We're obsessed with objects. And why is that? Because the scientist is obsessed with objects. And science is our religion here in America. The Supreme Court decided it 30 years ago. Oh, we went to court. Theology, should we accept that as our doctrine, or shall we accept science as our doctrine? Theologians got thrown out of court and the Supreme Court judges decided on science. It's our religion. But physics is all about the physical, so everything religious got thrown out. We don't care if sin, eternal damnation and original sin, they should throw those out. Good, that's the good part of it. But there are some really beautiful things about religion, inner life and so forth, that you need to keep in the mix, that the scientists will need to keep in the mix. Otherwise, you're just concentrating on particles which are vibrating. There's only one way to get to those kinds of people is to convince them of the path of vibration. Shabda Brahman. God as sound. It's the only way to get to them. Yes, it vibrates. If it vibrates, we say it's not God. It's mind. It's thought. And that thought then turns into an object later when the vibration gets grosser. And the particles too start out causal, subtle, and gross, because in our deep sleep state there's no vibration. Then it comes down to dreaming. Oh, all of a sudden our thoughts are vibrating and I'm dreaming. Then from dreaming we come awake, and the very thoughts that we had in sleep last night turned into an object. So Babaji was playing his auto harp in dream last night, you see. And then he comes out and there's the auto harp and he's playing it in a waking state. So the thought was father to the deed. The object in my dream was father to this. It came first, then this came later because of the density of the vibration. And this doesn't take religion to explain. You don't have to be religious, or because Buddha wasn't that religious, and Father of Yoga wasn't that religious. They didn't mention God in their scriptures. They just said, you'll get to it, just follow this practice. So in that way then vibration becomes just it's not even an esoteric path anymore, it's just something that should have been figured out already by you. If your scientists found out that objects were just vibrations or particles changing at a billionth of a second, and they were Buddhist, they would have given them up. Like Jesus. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. Well, you don't have any place to lay your head amongst swirling vibrations. So give them up. Renounce the object. Then use it as you will once you've renounced it. Use it in your waking state. So you're free of the attachment to it. And that's half the battle right there to enlightenment. Otherwise, you've got a whole series of vibrations that are occurring to your mind again and again, every 24 hours. And you're not doing anything to negate them, to neutralize them. You're just letting them run rampant and have their way with you in your daily life. You believe in them, like evolution. Stand back and say, I reject it. Get thee behind me. And now I want my freedom, here and now, not a post-mortem emancipation, like theology is trying to convince me of, or an idea that I was once an animal or a one-celled being that science is trying to convince me that I'd have to go to a zoo to see my relatives. And forget that. My relatives are back inside of me. They're called deities. They come out of consciousness. I am consciousness. And I return to consciousness when I leave consciousness. This is an inner life. And it's missing in science. And in theology, you see, where is theology going? If it's taking you up, it's not accurate. It must take you to the kingdoms of heaven within. See, I think I brought that chart, but I don't think we'll have time to get to it. Kingdoms of heaven within. Mind is the kingdom of heaven within. So there's earth, there's the second loka, and there's the third loka. And this is all dream life, you see, flowing back up through the gateway to the higher worlds. It's a 7-world system that has been proposed by India in very ancient times. If you know the Gayatri, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, Tat Savitur Varenyam, that's called the Gayatri mantra. It's based on Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, on the 3 worlds. And you can connect those to the 3 mantras of Om, A-U-M, and you can begin to make sense out of this inner journey, this sojourn. Like when he said, I don't know if it's here, He said, oh yes, it is. In my Father's house there are many mansions, or abiding places, homes of rest, peace, and sojourn. So if you're playing in the fields of the Lord, you're having a sojourn inside of yourself. And this is an outer field of the Lord. You're also playing here. So, but you have to connect the outer to the inner, because that's where the outer came from. You came out of dream, you made it solid. Then tonight you rendered it back into dream. That's you doing that. That's consciousness doing that. That's not matter doing that. Matter can't do anything but follow your control. So if matter gets the upper hand of you, then you become a physicist, say, then matter's got all the secrets to it. But you forget about the secret of your own self. You see, that nature came out of you. We don't think that way. We think we came out of nature. Fetus, sperm, egg, food, fetus, growth, brain. But you're forgetting the mind. And don't forget the intelligence of the mind. That pre-existed all of that. Food, sperm, egg. That's why the Tibetans are trying to tell us, I had a conscious birth. I saw my parents. I chose them. I chose my country. Then I chose my parents and got down into the womb and came out, you see. And hopefully I remembered that I did that. Otherwise I fall victim to looking for my relatives in a zoo, or looking up into space where there's nothing there. It has to be based on inner life to make sense out of anything. It's just a matter of the quality of the dream you're having, and how much awareness you can bring into it. Well, you cannot bring much awareness into it if you are falling into these kinds of vibrations. Now, beyond the pleasure-loving vibration, which is probably as high as most people get, if they're having a pleasurable life, they think everything's fine. I'm all right, you're all right. Everything's good. I've got money, I've got daily life and food, and I've got pastimes to do and so forth, and never need to think any higher beyond that. But you can see these vibrations do get a little bit more complex. Then you've got monorajya vritti, penultimately there, ungrounded vibrations which causes the mind's awareness to drift. You're probably inferring right now that you're meditating. Because if you ever meditated, like I say, your mind will drift. And then you'll come out of that and you'll go see your teacher next week and you'll say, I had this meditation where I just went away. Is that samadhi? Or, was that just a blank, a void? Nothingness. Because Brahman can't be nothingness. It's got to be somethingness. Maybe there's no substance in it, but there's essence in it. And that's why the tree, if you're looking at the tree, that's an outright illusion. You're just seeing an illusion there. The real tree is vibrating particles. If you could see that, you'd see what the tree really is. And then you'd know it would be empty. That it's changing all the time. And then you'd see the treeness of the tree. See, that's real. Better than real. That's the essence. Then you'll understand that trees came from thoughts. You see, forests came from thoughts. What to speak of the trees in the forest, and that you projected all this from your thought process. You had a little help from the cosmic trinity, of course. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, because they're the original projectors. But you got on board with it all and joined your ancestors. The collective consciousness finally became an individual. And that was called, deep sleep to dreaming to waking, or going through the three worlds, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, and back. Finally, you wanted out of that bath. So you were clean. You want out of the bath. So you go to the cosmic trinity. You say, nice world you have there, but I want out. That's what the enlightened souls do. No more birth in the womb of matter for me, only emanation from my Divine Mother. Brahmavidya sings very cogently in one of his songs. No more birth in the womb of matter for me, not becoming a seed that turns into a fetus and goes through the illusion of growth and then experiences decay, old age, and death, as Buddha said. Why should I do that again and again? Why not I just be an emanation from the sun? You see, that's why Sankriti went to the sun god. He wants just to be an emanation from that great wisdom that gets taken back again at night time and projected again in the daytime out of the highest wisdom, playing in the fields of the Lord, as we were saying. Sojourns in consciousness, not the sleep of delusion. So if you wanted to get beyond ungrounded vibrations that cause your mind to drift, you'd see there then dharna. You'd learn how to concentrate, focusing inward on the immediate nature of mind and awareness. Which wouldn't be possible if you couldn't concentrate the mind, i.e. if you were drawn out by objects all the time. If you got beyond inner and outer objects, all of a sudden you could concentrate on the objectless reality. Like my teacher used to say, you're always thinking about the infernal objects. You never think about the eternal subject. So again, back to everything we've been saying, all the way back to the first minutes of the class. You want to take your mind's powers of concentration and focus this in on reality. Thoughts on reality alone. Sharpen that arrow of the mind, by thoughts on reality alone. Then release it towards Brahman. Then it'll penetrate the target. As the Upanishads say. Now the last mention of a kind of vritti I found in the Yoga Sutras was chanchala. Intermittent and inconsistent vibrations which cause gaps in awareness. Sometimes they say that chanchala vritti is responsible for you leaving your meditation seat before you should. So you sit down and you should concentrate, and a thought occurs. Wouldn't you like to move around? This is what victimizes the hatha yogis. Wouldn't you like to get into another position now? Enough of this position. It's way beyond the body what you're seeking in yoga. So getting into one position and sit there for a while, the mind has to do the same. It's called a mental asana. I finally put out a whole book about it called Manasana, because I was so tired of people just thinking in terms of the physical asanas. What about your mental position? You can shift those too, and these are different mental positions, aren't they? Some of them imbalanced, some of them limited, some of them pleasure bound, and so forth. But eventually you get to this place where you'll have to face off with some thoughts of your mind. Get up, move. No. Did Buddha move? No. Did Christ move in his 12 days and 12 nights in the wilderness? No, I will not move. I'm a stone. I'm a mountain. So whatever pratika you have to take, if you sit near a mountain, be like the mountain. If you sit near the beautiful stream, then let your thoughts flow, but in the right direction toward the ocean. Don't let it become a stagnant swamp along the way. So you're in charge of this process, is what I'm saying. You're the yogi, you're the yogini. You have the divinity inside of you. Nothing can dictate terms to you. Holy Mother, our teacher, once said, even God can't do any harm to my children. So if you become a devotee of the Wisdom Mother, then you're protected for all time. There's no higher authority in all the worlds than her. And where is she in the religions? Where? Where has she been mentioned? Mother Mary? Isis? Is there a scripture on them? No. In India she's mentioned because there are scriptures on her, and the path is called Shaktism. And she informs all the other paths. Krishna has Radha, Rama has Sita, Christ had Mary, see? Muhammad had Fatima, Ramakrishna had Sharda. So this divine couple is coming back all the time, and Mother's the dynamic part of that. So You must worship her because you're in the dynamic phase of consciousness. Until you can get out of the dynamic phase of consciousness, which she will help you out of if you want, then you're subject to change. You're subject to at least seeing change. And if you see change, you begin to think the truth is change. Sri Ramakrishna said something once. He said, by being born many times and seeing the world and thinking it to be real, pretty soon they assume it to be real. So you're going by outer measure of the senses. But you have senses in dream tonight, 5 of them. And then you have a state where deep sleep happens, where you give those up too. So when you go into sleep, you give up these 5 senses. Then when you're in dream, you have another 5 senses. You see, hear, taste, touch, smell in a dream. That's actually a state of your consciousness called the kingdom of heaven within you. And it's variegated, just like this has many, many, many locations and worlds and so forth, that the dream state has all those locus inside, that you're not very good at looking at them and exploring them. You just go in for a few hours, come out, and you don't remember what you experienced in dream very much. Like 3 nights ago on the Oregon coast, I dreamed I was at an ashram yelling at all of you. Because my teacher used to yell at us too. So I had a dream where I was saying, you know, why are you doing everything at once? Separate these things. Why are you eating where you study? Why are you meditating on your bed where you sleep? Get this together. You know, do everything separately and in its own compartment. And you know, so you're from these dreams that happen to you then are like dreams of my father's. I'm always so amazed when I dream about him, because we have conversations, and the one thought that penetrates into my dream state the most is that he never died. I'm looking at him and he's looking at me and we're talking, and I think, my God, he never died. He just went inside. When Sri Ramakrishna passed away, Holy Mother was bereaved, you see, and she was taking off her jewelry and stuff and beginning to become a Purda widow, which is not a very good thing in India. But so anyway, so she's standing there getting ready to be a Purda widow, and he walked through the door of the room. And she was like, he had passed days before. And he said, well, why are you so surprised? I just went to another room. See, I just passed to another room, just like I'm doing right now. So you pass into the room of the dream state, basically, or the room of the other house in the Father's mansion. You go to another house. And people out in the other house are remembering you still. So in the memory is the key to eternity. In India, that word's called smriti. Huge word to remember all the wisdom back inside of you, all your ancestors, all the dharmic truths. You're supposed to take that from lifetime to lifetime. If you do take lifetimes, you're supposed to carry that with you. See? But you need training to do that. The curtain of nescience is in the way. That's a very great teaching in our tradition. The curtain of nescience falls down over souls who transmigrate. So once they hit the fetus state, they've forgotten everything. It's going to be very unlikely by the time they're 8 or 10, like Shankar remembered everything, that they're going to remember anything that happened to them. And when they get to the age of 10, time to get a job, make some money and so forth. So that's going to put them further away from remembering everything that happened to them in the previous lifetime. Therefore, farther away from the truth that you are unborn. So, all is one, unborn. First sloka. All is one, unborn, tranquil, endless, certain, and immutable. All of this wordage and verbiage, just go back to the very first words that the sun god spoke to Sankriti, unborn. There are 2 great teachings in India that are its main pillars. There's no birth and death, that is no beginning and middle happening at all, and there is no transformation happening at all. We're all totally caught up in transmutations. We want to see things change. our biology, our science, our gardening, our chemistry, our religion. Oh, if it changes, it's good. And then but it's all one unborn, acreate reality that is at the root of all this. And those who realize that are called enlightened. The rest, at best, are just noble. And maybe, in this day and age, not so noble anymore. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joytirgamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamaya Abira Bira Mayedi Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.